Hello and welcome to the first episode of Allen Codes. We're working on World War II Armored Recon to Kazarine Pass. This is going to be Chapter 4. 3 chapters have gone before. You haven't had a chance to see it, and I may not post the stuff that I've worked on Chapter 3 for, just because it ended up being boring in some ways. Well, I felt it was boring. But it was also a mismatch, and I kind of got off kilter, and then I had to move, and a lot of things happened. But let's take a look at what I've got so far. It involves just temp variables. Set down an additional variable which I do like to track that I've put before, which is battle time. Battle time is used when you're saying, well, when does this scene happen? If I know an artillery barrage occurs on battle time 3, then I can figure out what precedes and what postcedes. As far as how things are organized within a given scene, because a lot of my scenes in this are going to be combat scenes, which means they have to be fairly lively. And then, of course, we've got my go-to and my label. This is important for saying this is all temporary variables, and whatever happens above that, I do not need to change. If I need to change anything to add additional stuff or what have you, I will change it down below where the labels start. All right. Previous to this, this is all of Chapter 3 of what has gone before and what has changed. I will have to just keep that in mind. As I finish it up, and I will debug that at some point and get it running while I work on Chapter 4, while I cool down from Chapter 4. The big one here is all the variables for the startup, courtesy of course, Dan Fabulich. He's the one who made this possible with Choice of Games and Choicescript, as well as Stevan was no doubt involved there. I don't know how much is involved. I do know that they work well together. All right, and so here we go. We've got some basic stuff. There's 3 character traits: verbosity, directness, and sarcasm, as well as 3 traits that follow, which are more like skills, which you will raise. Stats for characters are simply how you perceive things in the game. They occasionally lend you a bit here or there if you're more direct. Or indirect, you may have a bonus when talking with somebody, same with verbosity, and occasionally with sarcasm. But for the most part, they're there for Chrome. The other 3 are not. Leadership, logistics, and doctrine are all fairly material, as well as career. Well, career less so. Career is more of a, hey, you're doing really well in this one aspect of things. Congratulations. Whereas leadership, logistics, and doctrine will help you get through a high stat, and those will help you get through what you need for those, for certain scenes. Lastly, we've got how you command, which is zeal, delegation, and adaptation. And that's because leadership is pretty core, because you play a sergeant in charge of a tank. And you have 3 crewmen, and how you set the table determines how they come to dinner, so to speak. There's probably something wrong with that analogy. But if you're zealous instead of caution, if you have delegation instead of control, adaptation versus routine, all are different and valid ways to take care of your men and set things up as you want to do. Lastly, we've got observation, which is actually combined across everybody, so everybody can eventually contribute to that, not just the sergeant. You'll notice the gender starts off as Sarge because some people don't really want to be bothered with that. It really doesn't matter. You can play a female character. I have set up the boundaries for that. I think it'll work. I don't think people will really care too much. And those who do care will probably enjoy playing a female character because it allows them to more immerse themselves in the role. All right, so I lead a bit of track for medals, although no medals have been issued in the game yet. Tank reliability. Oh, I need to copy that. I'm going to be using that for Chapter 4. That's one of the first things that we deal with is whenever a tank, you have time, you have to perform maintenance on the tank to some extent. You don't have to, but you can. And you probably should. All right, there's different parts of the radio that you can deal with by using radio parts. I should also make a section of that for people to do that. K-rations, stealth, padding. Yes, there is tank stealth. They used rubber inserts and blocks and other things for the tracks to reduce the sound the tank makes. which is really good. So instead of they hearing your tank at 700 yards, they hear it at 300 yards, and that means 400 yards of distance you don't have to cross. It became pretty well standard later on, but right now in 1942 things are pretty much catch as can. All right, there's various tank conditions, which I again have not used up. You can things like you're on fire or badly dented or smoking, things like that I would track, or at least be able to track. I think this is anyway, okay. So you've got health, and as well as a number of wounds. I allow a tracking of up to 8 wounds for the player character. Any more than that, and I figure it's not going to make too much of a difference. This is, so far is each slot can have a different thing to it. And it's mostly going to be Chrome, although I will try to have people comment on it at some point, especially if you go in further. We've also got your various direct skill levels with the tank itself. You notice that the driver, the mechanic, and the gunner all have the same sort of stats, as well as the commander. And while the driver drives and the gunner or gunners, it's important that everybody else can contribute in certain specific situations. The driver, if he knows a bit about gunnery, can in fact assist the gunner in subtle ways. It's not as big as the gunner's skill itself, but it's still helpful. And I track their wounds as well as to who they are. I probably don't need the strings. I should probably eliminate those. All right. So anyway, there's also some fact that the first 3 people can die, and if they all die, then you're stuck with the replacements: Denny, Piazza, and Buckner, rather than Owens, Mendoza, or Nelson. There's also a special one where they're horrified with whatever you've done, because there's some options to do some pretty horrible things, because, you know, players demand it. Even if they don't do it, they still demand that there's the possibility. You also have some tokens that you could have gotten from previous battles that you've taken basically as trophies. There's some other things where we track some specific events, whether Sergeant Lintz has a gyro, whether it even matters if his tank survived. Where are we? I will also need that. Okay, fine. I'm going to do my little trick there so I can carry it over to the next one. All right. I also track some things that you've killed, and if you've killed them, it's great. Basically, anything that's going to cross a chapter and need to survive, it goes there. Otherwise, it's a temp variable. And let me put this as a note down below. I do this so that I know what I don't have to go looking up the variable later on. I just have to scroll down a little, cut and paste, and done. The important part is to keep your brain engaged with the creative process or the engineering process and not make mistakes like that. It's my first typo and I haven't even begun writing. All right, these are my notes, my outline for chapter 4 of the Crossroads. What happens is it takes place after the early attack and repulse in the Medjidera, however that's pronounced, valley. And it's down another valley that the force called Blade Force will attack. It sounds really sexy in terms of a military way, but it was not a lot of guys just trying to push the Germans out of a valley, a tank-infested valley, as it were. But anyway, some of my notes include things that happened before. When west of town, there was a group of American artillery. There's an American artillery battery that did something very stupid in an attempt to fire at the Germans, be the first one to fire at the Germans, and they paid the price for it. The fact that North Africa was cold and wet during this period, its 16 yearly inches of rain fall almost exclusively between November and March. Wow. So, it's a lovely type of mud. I will have to include that. Did I screw that up in the last chapter? Maybe a little. I had the desert be a little too dry. Although there is one part where it can get really sticky and you get your tank mired and possibly blown up. Now, if it gets blown up, you're going to, in chapter 3, there's going to have to be a replacement for it. I will need A replacement tank there at the crossroads for you. So that reminds me, I need to track tank replacement. Crossroads. Some crew came all down with the with measles, and that's not how you spell measles. All right, that is also not how you spell measles. Measles. Fine, whatever. I may not be spelling it correctly, and I don't care. Spell check later on. Fine. Spell check is in fact your friend. Use it wisely. Some crew came all down with the measles. Their tank was immune. So that's why you'd have another tank there. There we go. See? In case you haven't blown your other tank up in Chapter 3. So, here we go. John Knight Waters is the commander of Blade Force. The shortcomings of the Stuart tank are well known, but they are the ones that can get here and be involved in the fighting. The medium tanks are having trouble getting ashore, and there you are. Narrowed the rail tunnels, okay, from Iran, and they've also shipped one in, obviously, from Morocco, because that's where you come from. Action begins the 25th of November. So we are just like 2 weeks after things. There's some of my notes here for what happens later on with the combat. You arrive at the crossroads. There's I'm going to have a guy from New Jersey. I don't know. It seems kind of cliche, but I'm going to have him there. We're going to lampshade it. It'll be fine. For those of you who don't know what a lampshade is, you put a lampshade on it so that everyone's in on kind of the joke. That he's a guy from New Jersey and he's put in charge of sort of the crossroads because he's the guy from New Jersey. So, the outline of the actual scenes rather than the larger attack, which is details up here. All right. You arrive, you're greeted by Sergeant. I need a good Jersey name. Need a good Jersey name. And now, if you can't come up with a name immediately, don't worry. You can always use a placeholder, which is Sergeant Jersey. Yeah, it's not cliche at all. So, Sergeant Jersey is going to be replaced by some other name that we'll get to. And if I need be, I will randomly generate a Jersey name and pick one out of a hat. And I will go with it after just a little research to make sure that it is an actual Jersey name. And that it doesn't have any connotations one way or the other to it. Unless I want there to be a connotation. In which case, I can reference that later on. And this is part of the thing where you will research before you write, but your writing will also inform your research. So it goes back and forth in terms of, I need a Jersey name, and now I need to look one up. And I'm not going to do it now because I'm on a roll. So, at the crossroads, you're going to pick your poison. Maintenance, gambling. There's two kinds. There's both cards and dice. Gossiping and trading. Time only passes. You can gossip all you want. Jawing is free. This is after the first tick. You get a visit by an officer. Told to stay. You're now part of Blade Force. You can ask a few questions, but the idea is to root the Germans out of Tunisia and basically remove things from the tank-infested valley. Now, you might be noticing that most of my prose trails off on over the edge, and I've tried to avoid that. But I also wanted to increase the screen size so people could better see what I was writing. All right. Essentially, the logistics are what is here is holding both sides back. They're bad roads, bad rails, terrible airfields except around like Tunisia and Bizerta along the coast. Basically, if you're not along the coast and near a port, things suck. And this is stymied both sides, and there's no way around it. It's crap logistics. It's one of the reasons the Germans weren't initially kicked out, and one of the reasons the Germans weren't able to, in return, kick the Allies out, or at least back a ways. It hampered both sides. It's the desert. It's North Africa. It's not friendly to tanks. All right. On their second round of poison, maintenance, gambling, gossiping, and trading. If you do maintenance twice in a row, you get less. You get less regardless either way on the second time around because you've let dust and dirt get into things. You can't gamble the same way. If you've chosen dice, you have to choose cards. I don't know. Dice, cards, random. Eliminations and pots. It's not hard to do a simple simulation of poker. Basically, I just roll some dice and say the probability of outcome is this on the table. And you'll have a certain hand, you'll bet or otherwise, and if the value of one is above the value of the other, you're going to win. And how much you bet and everything else, and it'll not be a bad simulation by the end of it, but it will be entirely simple, and it's only going to be a few rounds. Dice is even easier because craps is easy to track. You get your point or no point. Point, pass, or not pass. I'll look up some of the jargon again to make sure that I'm dealing with not just the craps games that we're familiar with, but the craps games of that period. They probably didn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that, for example, Vegas would have. Here they've just got basically a cloth mat and they're tossing dice on it. And maybe they've got a dice cup, maybe they don't. So, trading is fine. You can always trade. Gossip is always free, but also repetitive. Alright, so you get a final chance to trade as people turn in for the night. This is going to be your option to swap things, or rations, or medical kits, or bits and pieces and bobs for other things that others might have. So you can get some better rations, you can get some radio parts, perhaps. There's things that you can buy, so to speak, even though you're out in the war, because trading is right among them. Hey, it's 17 minutes in and I still haven't written a thing. Alright, so this is a final chance to trade, right. Germans fly at night. You may realize something about the bomber that crashed in the last chapter. You get a chance to spend gathered experience points and talk with the crew. Remove horrified or other misgivings. If not resolved, you get an early morning message from the delayed force officer. Reduce career. Someone squealed. And I'll need to track that. Alright, so anyway, and then the next day something's going to happen. What we're going to be interested right now in is with the crossroads. Alright, here we go. It is cold. It is wet. You've been traveling along the road for the past day, at least. Or so. Let's start off with mud. Mud splatters. Mud. A whole road worth of it. Before you. And fish tails. fountains out the back as the treads of the tank nickname. As the treads of the tank nickname do their best. For the past 2 days, been on the road, waiting for gas. Let's take a look. Was it additional gasoline that I used previously? And here we'll just do a quick search for that. I believe it is additional gasoline. I'd like to be sure. Yep, additional gasoline right there. And if additional gasoline equals 0, then instead you're waiting for orders. Okay, go away. Waiting for gas. Waiting for daylight. Waiting for rain to stop. At last, though, you be near. At last, though, your maps say nearing the journey's end. Up ahead is a vital crossroads, and the force be attaching to the next stage. This. All right. Let's do the first choice. I've set the stage. I've told it how it is. I want to hear the player's thoughts. At least this misery. Alright, at least there was something to do. What else? We'll be tracking specifically my 3 stats. Well, we're tracking both verbosity, directness, and sarcasm. But we're also going to give the player a chance to adjust their zeal. What was it? Zeal. Fine. Zeal, delegation, and adaptation. At least there will be something to do. That wasn't management. This seems like it's a bit of old code. Well, tell you what. Zeal, delegation, and adaptation. Yeah. Yeah, that's old code. And I can eliminate it. Yay! I always feel good when doing that. Right. Zeal, dedication, adaptation. Now you may be saying, well, that doesn't really matter, does it? Well, it does. This sets your character, and it will change things through there, as well as give you an idea of where you're headed. All right, so that's a zeal remark. We're a long way from any port or airfield. That's a cautious remark. All right. Let's see. Routine. We'll be able to wonder what the army has gotten there ahead of us. I don't like that. I'll probably change it. So, routine. How about routine? The usual then. Camp, maintenance, dinner, sleep. Do it again. Okay, those are the 4 choices. Now, I also need a null choice for people who don't care, because, well, they don't really care. So, at least there will be something to do. Say, just get on with it. And that's kind of the null. Like, I don't want to put anything into. I don't want to change my zeal, delegation, or adaptation. All right, so just get on with it. And with that, we will then go to chapter 4. Start. Arrive at the crossroads. Which reminds me, at some point we're going to need to set that, but not quite yet. All right. Crossroads. There we go. And before we're going to be on the road. Now you're saying it's a small thing and it's 2 lines of code. But it matters. It all matters. Because during play, people want to see, like, where am I? I'm on the road. Oh, I've arrived at the crossroads. I've actually arrived at the crossroads, because they'll see that in the stat screen, which we haven't gotten into too much. This is the stat screen. It looks like stuff. It's a lot of coding to just get things to pop up when they're supposed to. And where's the meat of it? There we go. No, store stat name. Here we go. Stat name. It throws all that down and gives you your stats for various things. As opposed pairs, delegation, control. Not management. Management is something else. Management's a looser thing. All right, and then we've got a stat chart. And do I even care about sarcasm? I didn't put that in there, did I? And I do the story version of that. I did not include your sarcasm or anything like that. I will have to come back to that. Let me put myself a note for that. Because if you don't do that, I'm not doing it now because well, I'm busy. Comment. Fix sarcasm. Direct, and what was it, verbosity? there in a humorous. And I may do something else with there. I don't know. A lot of this stuff is in the air, and a lot of the stuff. This is the first pass of writing this for the most part. And as with anything, the first draft is always the one where you're going to eventually make a second draft of this. You're gonna fix a whole bunch of stuff and make it look like you knew what you were doing all along. Thank you, Neil Gaiman. That's some excellent advice. Incidentally, if you've not seen his masterclass, I suggest it. It is totally worth it. He knows what he's doing. So, anyway, chapter 4, arrive at the crossroads. Just get on with it. And we move right along from there. All right. If, what were my, oh man, I don't know if we had engaged them. Crap. I'd have to go searching through chapter 3 and make sure that, all right, let me use a simple not statement there. The exclamation point here makes it so easy. Is it equal to not net? Basically, if they didn't meet the assault gun, they didn't get shot at. Better than being shot at. Okay, and that's going to be a bit of sarcasm. Sarcasm plus 2 sarcasm slight. All right. And this is also sarcasm. It's just a different type of sarcasm. Okay, let's cut and paste that over here again. And then we'll do the negative here. You might be noticing that I reuse a lot of code. That is correct. My days of laboriously typing everything out are over. I try to move it up as we're a long way from any port. Or an airfield. Anybody be saying, isn't that a lot of work just to get a little thing here? Everything helps. It really immerses the player in it. And it all leads to the same thing. I have to figure out if I want to do some prose here. I probably will. That would be the creative portion of it. And I don't feel it in my brain right now to do creative stuff, because I've had to set all this up and burned a lot of time. Maybe we'll go to 40 minutes here. All right. Wonder if anyone is already there. That's an adaptation line. I also need to make a note of Sergeant Baum, who's with you. Sergeant Baum is Frenchman riding along the tank. As bad as it is in the cupola, is worse on the hull. Alright, because you do have Frenchmen and a few infantrymen who are with you. They will be important later. They've been with you since chapter 3, middle of chapter 3, and they'll become important later on. It's one of the few things I do well as a writer is try to set things up ahead of time so I don't have to shoehorn things afterwards. Although a lot of shoehorning does occur because, again, this is the first draft and sometimes you don't know exactly what you're writing. Especially you'll find that as your outline goes on, you begin to deviate more and more from it. And that's usual. And that's not... you can plan or you can pants your way through things. A certain amount of planning is good. Certainly you don't have to stick to your plan, but the act of planning is important because it lets you think through the story of where it could go. And you'll find that's invariably useful when you start to just have to make stuff up, where you start to have to try to pants your way through a scene where, like, I don't know how she is going to react to this, but she is in some way, shape, or form. And is there a giant penguin in this? I didn't think there was going to be, but now there is, and now I have to write to that. So, not going to get into that. That was a dream I had last night. Apparently, you can throw giant penguins in there if the story calls for it, and then they can become useful later on. Because again, giant penguins. So, I wonder if anyone is already there. And that is going to be set delegation +2 delegation slightly increased. Now you may be saying, couldn't I just cut and paste the other stuff above? Yes, I forgot my own step. So, the usual then. Delegation -2. Delegation slightly decreased. All right, and then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to throw in a little prose after each one of these before we go to the crossroads. Just a little something for the player to differentiate what they've chosen, indicate why it's important, and I gotta stop doing that. And, you know, I kind of want to separate these other things out a bit by, not verbosity. Verbosity has no place because you're not talking with anybody, but directness. There we go. If direct greater than 50, it's a little extra work. It's worth it. You do this enough, and if you don't make a steaming, terrible mess of it, then people will begin to feel like, you know, like it matters. Because your characters do matter, how the player wants to play the game, and you eventually will end up catering to that. Wonder if anyone is already there. Chances are, we're not the first to arrive. See, in one, if you're direct enough, it's a question that you're pondering. Otherwise, you're going sort of indirect. Okay, the usual then. Okay, so the usual then: camp, maintenance, dinner, sleep, etc. And then we'll reverse it for that. The important part is only 5 things will show up on this. I'd love to turn it down just a little bit. Maybe I will. But I want them to have the sarcasm option. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. Might be too much. I may have to it will be good to have a normal routine again. All right, there we go. All right, that is all for the first episode here. I know I haven't gotten very far. Well, I really haven't gotten very far. But this is essentially the art of writing. Is it gets pretty complicated. You can, if I were to restrict myself only to 3 choices and just bull through stuff, not a problem. I tend to make things pretty complex. That's my style. It may not work for you. That's just the way it is. Everybody writes differently. This is the way I do it. Don't take these lessons too hard to heart. They are. This is an option. This is the way, one way it is done, not the way it is done. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode 1 of Alan Codes, um, and I hope you take care and stay safe out there. Thanks.